Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast, where we dive into thoughtful conversations and insightful discussions with world-class people, all with the aim of inspiring, educating, and empowering our listeners.
We are thrilled to have you here with us on this exciting journey to explore the diverse stories and the ideas that have the power to shape the world for the better.
Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast.
All right, Growth Untold listeners, brace yourself because today we're diving deep into the world of branding with none other than the mastermind behind one of the most influential fitness brands of our generation, Gymshark. Here's a man who knows how to make waves and build brand magic through powerful storytelling. From the empowering DELOAD initiative spotlighting mental health and wellness, to the breathtaking Every Strong Belongs out-of-home billboard campaign starring the captivating Leanna Deeb. Charismatic, creative, and always on the cutting edge, welcome Gymshark's Chief Brand Officer, Noel Mack.
Damn, that was some intro, man. I feel embarrassed now.
Embarrassed? Oh God, we don't want the intro to make you feel embarrassed.
No, I'm only joking. It's an honor, man. Thank you guys for having me. This is an exciting conversation.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. So obviously, Gymshark is such a massive part of the conversation. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk to you about your journey in marketing, your journey in branding. You started Rebrand in 2008. So, you spent a lot of time in branding and marketing before you got to Gymshark. Talk to me a little bit about that and also your upbringing and when you realized that branding and marketing was going to be such a big part of your life.
It really happened by accident. I was a budding musician. I was that kid at school that was always playing guitar and piano and anything I could kind of get my hands on. I went to university in the UK to a place that spawned a lot of like stars and some big names. And when I was there was a particular module on marketing in the music industry, and man, I fell in love with it. I thought it was so interesting. The way record labels and the music industry would like shape and coerce the way they introduced an artist to the market was just like absolutely blew me away. So like I think that's where the love and me kind of realizing that marketing and like brand building was something I was interested in. That's kind of where it kicked off. But I didn't do anything with it because I was trying to make it as like a producer and all this kind of stuff. And that career sort of built up to a point where I was in a room with one of your Toronto native homies, Drake, doing some stuff together, which was a wild glitch in the matrix. And then
so this was before Drake was like what he is now. This was early Drake.
Yeah, but not early the way you guys would know him early. Do you know what I mean? Like comeback season early. It wasn't that early. It was a little bit after that. He'd started to kind of make it in the UK. So we did some stuff and then I happened to make some money. And then from there it was like, damn, because we grew up in a very, very like working class background. And I always had this excuse of like, oh, once you've got money, it's easy to make more. And then all of a sudden I found that I had some money and I was like, well, shit, I better try and make some more then. So me and a friend started the company that you talked about before. And basically I was like, well, that marketing stuff that I picked up on at university, I'd love to try and do some more with that, like as almost like the day job while I'm still trying to do this music thing. And it just so happened that then started to take off. And we were taking, honestly, again, still stealing techniques from the music industry. Like there's a band in the UK at the time called the Arctic Monkeys. I don't know how aware you guys are of them. But
of course.
Yeah, man, I was in love with the story that they'd had sellout gigs long before they got signed because they'd built like this community of fans on MySpace, and this was like early days, right? So this idea of like building communities online through social media was revolutionary to me, and I was trying to convince companies and clients that this was the way to do it, and no one listened, but some people listened. And then it just so happened that one day, Ben, who founded Gymshark, came to see me. Was like, yeah, no, I've seen what you do. That's cool, man. I want to do that too. So Gymshark were a client at first, and then, as you can imagine, it all kind of went from there.
Wow, that's amazing. So it literally was your side hustle before it became your full-time, like this is what you do.
Yeah, sort of. Like, I mean, man, you made it to the upper echelons of, like A-list world, but I'm sure you know a bunch of people who are just kind of placing a few bets on a few different things. We all know that guy in LA who's a movie director, a songwriter, a producer, an actor, he does all of the above, but then one of them happens to pop off for them. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of feel like it was a little bit of that.
Yeah, I'm like that too, man. I mean, I feel like you kind of have to be nowadays. But yeah, I'm like that too. I have a gin company, uh, like a Indian dry gin, but it's made in the London dry method. I have a production company as well. So I get that. I get that. You kind of got to have a bunch of things going at the same time.
I love it, man. But look at like Ryan Reynolds, right? He's doing it at the top of the industry. Do you know what I'm saying? He's doing it across the board. He's still doing it. So yeah, it's definitely a valid thing to do. But yeah, rather than like main hustle and side hustle, I kind of see like that. I was just placing bets and seeing what jumped off.
That's a really good way to think about it. I like that.
Yeah. Noel, you said something really interesting earlier, that you were trying to convince people about engaging in online communities, and you have such a passion for social media. It seems like Gymshark was actually one of the first brands, in my honest opinion, as somebody who's a marketer, that actually invested in micro influencers and people online. Where did this passion come from? Where did this all come from, of pushing online communities to companies?
Well, the whole thing was born out of online communities. Before Gymshark and before you saw any kind of fitspos and influencers, or as they call them now, online, what you had first was this forum called bodybuilding.com, where people would just hang out. And you guys remember the days of forums, right? I was on all sorts of geeky forums, but like there was like certain users on those forums that were always online. They were always contributing loads. Like those guys were the influencers of forums. You know what I'm saying? You didn't know who they were. They were Dave Toronto 103 or whatever their stupid handle was. Do you know what I'm saying? But they were like these power users on forums. Those were the early iterations of influencers. So long before there was any of this, there was bodybuilding.com, which was the home of online fitness. Ben, our founder, was just a 19-year-old kid who was kind of quiet and the kind of nerdy kid in class, trying to get his arms a little bit bigger. So he was hanging out on there, trying to figure out how to get bigger and all that kind of stuff. Got to talking to some of these like power users, if you want to call them that, who had done some YouTube explainer videos at the time, and these videos were getting like 1,000 views, which again, back then was a lot of, do you know what I'm saying? Everybody now with 1 million views has got an agent and they're wearing sunglasses indoors and all that kind of but yeah, in those early days, like Ben was just sending some product out to these guys and saying, hey, it'd be dope if you wore this stringer vest that I made. Do you know what I'm saying? And then they did, and there's a couple of those sold, and so on and so forth. And it's really, really organic. Like I'd love to sit here and tell you that we got a whiteboard out and went, okay, guys, I think we've just invented a whole new form of marketing. Do you know what I mean? That is not what happened. The thing was so organic. It was, oh, wouldn't that be cool? Oh, that seemed to work well. Let's do some more of that. Before you know it, we're sitting in front of you with like one of the most revered influencer marketing teams and strategies in the world, and one of the most powerful social media presences in the world, right? We've got 4.9 million followers on TikTok versus Nike's 4.8 million. We've got something like 80 million likes and 11.2 billion views on hashtag Gymshark on TikTok. So that early adoption of social media has obviously paid dividends, because now it means we're punching way above our weight compared to some of the biggest, most recognizable brands on the planet.
So it was right place, right time. It was also using a strategy that maybe the bigger companies didn't even know was a strategy, right? And maybe you guys didn't even know it was a strategy. It was kind of just like, it was the perfect storm, essentially.
100%. And like I was giving a keynote 2 days ago, and I'll give you the stupid analogy that I used there. It was like, if the aim of the game, right, was for me to beat up Floyd Mayweather, guess what? I'm definitely not going to box with him, right? That would be a terrible idea. I'm going to have to figure something else out, right? I'm going to have to get Mina to run up behind him and hit him over the head with something, and then get Alex to run him over with the car. Do you know what I'm saying? I can't box with him. You good idea. So equally, to your point, when you're going up against some of the biggest brands in the world and trying to make a dent, I'm not going to have a pound for pound marketing war against them. I'm not going to beat their product innovation. You've got to figure something else out. Do you know what I mean? Thankfully, influencers, Instagram, Facebook groups, back when it was that, forums, TikTok, that was the getting you to hit them over the head. And like you say, we managed to build a business worth 1.4 billion under their nose.
So that's interesting that you say that, because yeah, you're right. Like if you try to beat them at their own game, they're gonna kill you. Like they have so much more money than you, they're bigger than you. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Apple AirPods is another great example of that, right? When you think before the AirPods came along, you had these huge companies, Beats, Sennheiser, Bose, whatever else, and they're all competing over marginal gains, right? More bass, more battery life, more high fidelity, whatever, right? And I think Apple have looked at it from a real human point of view, looked at what they're offering and gone, but that's not the problem with wireless headphones. The problem isn't more bass. The problem is settings, Bluetooth, pair, hold down the thing? Is it paired? Is it not? Is it switched off? Well,
They're huge.
Exactly. So they solved that problem instead, the weird Bluetooth connection thing. The sound quality, ironically, was the same as the free ones they gave you in the box. Do you know what I'm saying? So the game that those guys were playing, they didn't even try and play that game. They gave you like kind of low quality sound, to be honest with you, but they solved the real human truth and the real issue. And I'm sure you've seen this stat that if AirPods was its own company, it'd be something like one of the most, the 10th most valuable tech company in the world or something like that. The numbers are absolutely incredible.
Damn.
And again, it goes back to that exact same thing of not playing the game the way others have played it, because if you play that game, you're going to lose 10 times out of 10.
That's funny.
Damn, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, Noel. I was reading somewhere that when you look at Beats headphones, when you look at things like that, and you see everybody buying it, it's not because it's an incredible sound or superior product in that sense of utility and offering that to the people who buy it, Noel. To your point, it's actually, you buy for two reasons. You want to signal that you have good taste and you're affluent and you are keeping up with the trends, and they've like manufactured this urgency in the market of people who are saying, I got to buy this. This is going to make me look cool. When I wear this to the gym, oh my goodness, everybody's going to be checking me out in my Gymshark stringer and my Gymshark clothes. Yeah. Winning combination.
But also, I gotta say, I'll tell you my story of when I bought my first Gymshark gear, and it wasn't that long ago, honestly. Because so I was looking for stringers, and I couldn't find any at all on the market that I liked, and especially from a reputable company. And, I was putting on some size, and I was feeling really good about the way I looked. So I was like, man, I got to get some stringers. Like, I just want some stringers. and Gymshark had like great options, reputable company. And that was my first time going online and buying stuff from Gymshark. But I think that's kind of a great example of what you just talked about, because I went and looked. I looked on Nike. I looked on the competitors, and they didn't have stringers. Like, they just didn't even have them. And so I was like, that's a great example where you guys took that and were like, let's run with this. Or you tell me if I'm wrong, but let's run with this. No one else is really doing this, so let's make sure we have this in our catalog.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, I feel like the gym culture thing was the best example I can give you to try and put it for anybody who isn't aware of Gymshark or anybody who hasn't faced that same thing that you're talking about, Mina, is like, when the skateboard brands first came around, right, the Stussies, Pata, etc., like, skateboarding was this underground thing which like wasn't really understood. It certainly wasn't acknowledged by the big brands of the world. Do you know what I mean? And they were the first brands that came along and stood up to that community and said, hey, we represent you. And now look what that's done, right? And that's given way to Supreme and Kith and all these things that have come downstream after that. I think in the same way, when we started Gymshark, you had the like sports brands over here doing what they do, and obviously they're amazing at that, right? Then you had like these Venice Beach like lifting things, which is like these huge dudes, right? And you had this community in the middle, people like who were in the exact moment that you just talked about, been to the gym, put some size on, and you kind of look over there and go, but I'm not that. I'm not a sports person, but equally I'm not that. I'm not the Venice Beach Arnold Schwarzenegger looking dude. I'm this other thing in the middle. It's kind of like a hybrid between the two. And Gymshark was the first band that stood up and went, yo, we represent you. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it was born out of culture and born out of that exact human truth that you just sort of identified.
And shout out to the United Kingdom as well, because like I said, I've spent some decent time there, and I will say the UK gets on certain trends before anyone else in the world. Like boxing, for example. Yeah, like the UK understands boxing. They love boxing. I think the UK is one of the greatest markets for boxing in the world. Like everybody else now loves boxing, but in like the UK has loved boxing before anyone else. You guys just got certain trends that you get on before anyone else. I think music is a big thing in the UK, that music takes off in the UK before everywhere else. So I do think there's probably an advantage there as well, is that the UK is really in tune with some trends before they blow up worldwide.
Yeah, for real.
Just to switch gears here, just to talk a little bit more about Gymshark. And this podcast, Growth Untold, also is about highlighting and celebrating diversity and diverse voices. And Mina and I noticed Gymshark is really a market leader in that approach. And not only racial diversity and ethnic diversity from Leanna Deeb, out of home billboard campaign. It's beyond that. It's about like inclusivity of mental health. The whole deloading campaign, huge fan of that. Like I was always a fan of deloading in the gym, even though I hated doing that at the time when I was a powerlifter. I hated it. I was like, I don't want to deload. But in this particular use case, you made it something where people can rally behind and fall in love with the popular gym cultural narrative that's about going the opposite of hustle porn and taking a step back, relaxing, right? So maybe can you just walk us through the evolution of Gymshark, historical state, all about, maybe stringers, and you just create that beautiful Venn diagram of sports, Venice speech culture, like that historical state to where you guys are today with this beautiful purpose-driven company. That's,
what a question. That is a first of all, let me big shout out to Alex, right? Because so many people would miss the DELOAD reference in there. I'm so glad that you identified it. So for anybody who doesn't know, this is a common thing in like the bodybuilding, powerlifting world, whatever else. And in fact, Alex, you tell us what's involved in a DELOAD week.
Yeah, back in my powerlifting and bodybuilding days, basically I think the term of deload means that you have to take time off because you take 2 steps back to get a couple steps forward, right? You have to relax the joints, the muscles, take some time off, lifting lighter to attack it the next cycle. Is that what it means? Is that what you...
Spot on, man. Or to take it really succinctly, right? Take a weight off. So you can imagine when a brand like ours, we want to approach that brief of mental health, and we want to figure out a way and an umbrella and a term that we can try and own when it comes to all things taking a break, taking a step back. When one of our creative team, shout out to the creative team, came up with the idea of deload, I thought, that's so good. It's so amazing. Again, literally the idea of taking a weight off, as in stripping the weight off the bar, but still doing it, but not doing the weights you would normally press or, squat or whatever else it might be. It was so perfect for what we wrapped up as into our mental health campaign. And deload's like it's like an umbrella term for everything we do. We kind of figured out early on that mental health and physical health are really, really linked. Some of the most shredded, in shape, aspirational physiques I know, when you talk to them and say, wow, you look amazing, so many of them say, yeah, but I only got into this because it helped me, it helped the way I think and helped me deal with my job or the casting calls I was going to, and I wasn't booking any gigs or anything like that. And I was going to the gym because it helped me. Do you know what I mean? And like the physique and all the other stuff was just like a happy byproduct of that. Do you know what I mean? There's a common meme or a common thing you might have seen on there online, which is go up to the biggest guy in the gym and say, "Who hurt you, bro?" Do you know what I mean? Because the whole reason is because he's like mentally messed up. So when we realized that was a real thing for our consumers, like, well, obviously we need to try and have a hand in this mental health thing then. And then deload was a theme, and we activated it in a certain way, and it did well. It did okay, but the time where deload really hit its stride was when, again, I talked earlier about Apple unlocked that huge business opportunity and that human truth with the AirPods. We try and base everything we do in like real human truths, and the human truth that we uncovered was the fact that men, and obviously men's mental health in particular, is a particularly sensitive subject. There's some like horrendous statistics about male suicide and some really horrible stuff like that. So we wanted to help. And we heard this statistic that men are, and I think this is more of a British thing than an American thing, but men are more likely to share their problems with their barber than their therapist, right? And that thing that you two just did there, that nod, is the same nod I've got from everybody who I've repeated that line to, right? That's one of those moments where if you're a marketer, you go, oh man, I'm onto something here. Do you know what I mean? That really resonates. So we opened the DELOAD barbershop in London, where we had barbers that were trained in, as mental health professionals. And we encourage men to come down, get a cut, get a skin fade, whatever else, and talk about their life. And man, the noise that made, the way that was adopted, the way people shared that message, the messages we got in. So like I want to be anonymous with this on purpose, but we had like a woman get involved and say, drop us a message and say, guys, I just want to thank you for what you did. We live nowhere near London. My husband didn't come to the barber shop, any of that stuff, but he saw what you guys were doing, and that night came home and said to me, hey, I could do with talking to you. Like, there's some stuff going on which I'd like to open up about. Do you know what I mean? So the beauty of it is, even though we probably, I don't know, during that time we cut, I don't know, X hundred guys' hair, and I'm sure they came along and they got a bunch of value from that. But then the noise, the osmosis and the noise that made, right, and raising the awareness of telling guys like, you should open up, you should talk, all that kind of stuff. Take the weight off, going back to the deload thing. I'm so proud of that, honestly. Like, and people quote it to me all the time. I don't know how aware you guys are of Cannes, Lions. They give out the most prestigious marketing awards. We don't really do that because we don't kind of need to. We're not an agency, but we had like multiple people from Cannes message and be like, please submit that for an award because like we're telling you it's going to win. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that was really cool. We didn't actually do it because we don't do this stuff for awards. We do it because we think it helps our community and we just want to be seen as sincere as possible. But yeah, that was dope, man. And that's the kind of stuff that when I'm an old man, right, and I'm looking back over my life and whatever else, I'll be really proud that a company that I was a part of was able to do stuff like that.
100%, man. You have definitely have a ton to be proud of, but that's definitely something that goes beyond building a brand. It goes beyond fitness and athleisure. You hit a very interesting point. I want to ask you about something that I now talk to my friends about all the time. We live in an era, especially in America, I don't know about the UK, where the definition of a man, the definition of masculinity is rapidly going through, I think, a change phase. I don't think anybody has an answer of like where it's headed, but there's obviously something going on in the underbelly where this is changing. How have you seen the definition of masculinity change through your time at Gymshark? And I don't mean in the company, I mean in the outside world.
Great question. I feel like it feels like a pendulum swinging from side to side. I feel like at the start it was the biggest dudes with the biggest muscles. Then it was almost kind of like it's not cool to be masculine anymore, and actually you should sort of discard masculine or traditionally masculine qualities. And now I can't help but feel like it's coming back as well, right? And like there's a reason that stoicism keeps rearing its head now, right? By definition, the Stoics have been around for a very, very long time, right? Marcus Aurelius isn't new news, but there's got to be a reason why the Daily Stoic and these books about like the rugged individual are like coming back around now, and everyone's following these Stoic quotes and whatever else. And I honestly think it's probably because young men out there need it. Do you know what I mean? They need something to sort of look towards, and they need someone to tell them, actually, no, like sometimes times are tough, and sometimes you just have to bite down on your gum shield and push through it. Do you know what I mean? So like I said, I kind of feel like it was here, then it went over there, and now it's kind of swinging back again. And I honestly think the right answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But as ever with the world, it doesn't kind of work out that way. Do you know what I mean? So we probably will just do a bit more back and forth, I think. What's your guys' take? What made you pick up on that particular line?
I just hold on before Mina, you talking that. I just want to say, Noel, you are the king of analogies, my man. I know I'm sweating. Like Mayweather, like let's keep it going. And
Okay.
every time we ask you a question, if there's not an analogy, we're gonna retake that. Okay.
Yeah, Alex loves analogies, and he calls them nuggets. He calls them golden nuggets.
Nuggets,
so
man.
he loves
By the
the
end
nuggets.
of this, right? You just laid the bar down. I'm going to get an Aladdin analogy in by the end of this podcast. Okay.
All right.
Dude, they're easy. They're easy.
They're easy for you,
Diamond in
not
the
for
rough.
me.
Yeah, all right. I won't lead you into that.
No layups. All right, Mina.
Yeah, I think our world is definitely, or our society, especially in America, I think people are struggling with identity. I think people are struggling to find themselves in the world. I think the world is becoming so noisy now with social media and, people putting on the most perfect image of their life, right? Like I find myself going on social media and I catch myself thinking this, but I go, man, my life is shit. Like these people's lives are so perfect. Like, damn, they're like getting ice cream and you know what I mean? Just like the simplest stuff. And I'm like, and then I go, wait a second. That's the image they're portraying to the world. That's not actually their full life. And I feel like there's a lot of people that aren't as cerebral, maybe, that aren't as aware, that really start believing that shit, that really start believing like, this is what my life needs to be like. My life is less than because of all of this. And I think that bleeds into identity as well of like, well, who am I? Why do I not feel special in the world? Why do I not feel like myself? And so I do feel like there's an identity crisis in this country. Maybe the Western world, I think there's an identity crisis going on. I think more than any other time in history where people are struggling to find who they are, what they stand for, what their purpose is in life. How do they identify? Like I grew up in a really Christian household, And I used to go to church like 3 times a week, and it was a community thing. It wasn't like, you know, but I feel like now when I was like, as I was growing up, it was like, well, being religious isn't that cool. So maybe don't identify yourself with religion. And then it was like, well, you know, being ethnic isn't cool. So maybe don't identify yourself with like having a cultural ethnic background. Like you're American or whatever. And I think now that's bleeding into like, it's bleeding into everything, right? Some people aren't identifying with gender anymore. So now it's like, we're not going to identify with gender. And so it's like religion, ethnicity, gender. If you don't have any of that stuff to identify with, then what do you identify with? Do you know what I mean? And the question becomes, is it important to identify with anything at all? Like maybe it's just not important to identify with anything at all. You have to ask yourself that question as a human being and as a person in the world. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
I went on a rant there.
No, I know what you're saying. Yes, it was a good rant, man. You had me there for a minute. But like, Mina, you probably, the thing I'm proud of the social media generation for, because people seem to sort of rag on the social media generation, like, oh, these damn kids, all they care about is TikTok or whatever it is, right? Certainly in the UK, I'm not so sure this can be applied to the US or Canada. You guys can tell me, but Mina, you spent some time in the UK, so you can fill me in. I feel like what Britain used to be, tea and crumpets, and do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I remember an American guy one of my American friends coming here and saying to me, Noel, I was surprised by how diverse the UK is. He was like, I thought this is where they made white people, which really made me laugh when he said that. But I'm really proud of the way the UK can kind of evolve and adopt new cultures and different immigrants from different backgrounds and stuff like that. The key example I'll give you is like when Freddie Mercury moved here as Farouk Bulsara, right? He was a gay immigrant in the 1950s. Can you imagine the sort of adversity that he faced, right? Today, Freddie Mercury is like a picture of Britain. Do you know what I'm saying? When you see that famous image of him stood there at Wembley with the crown in the air, it's like quintessential Britishness. But what an amazing rebrand that is. Do you know what I'm saying? To go from the UK probably shunning him when he first arrived, and when you watch the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, you see them shunning him, to adopting him with open arms and then holding him up as this like champion of Britishness. I'm like, that's so cool. And now I don't know how aware you guys are of grime music, but like Stormzy, when Stormzy came out at Glastonbury in a Banksy like bulletproof vest thing with the Union Jack painted on the front, I remember seeing that and everybody going crazy for him and loving it. I was like, wow, this is our new Freddie. This is, do you know what I'm saying? And then just the other day I saw Skepta for walking was at the Met Gala for Burberry, and again I'm like, here it is again. Skepta's like his Nigerian heritage, right? His parents, he's first generation English, and Burberry are there outfitting him, right, for the Met Gala. It was like, that's a picture of Britain now, and people like Burberry are holding that up as like quintessential Britishness. So again, I'm not sure if it's the same in America, but I'm really proud of my country at least for like taking on immigrants and people from different cultures and backgrounds, assimilating them into what this new version of the UK looks like. I'm genuinely super proud of that.
Well, no, I can say Canada's the same way. I mean, I think Canada is one of the most diverse countries in the world, and it embraces culture beautifully. But what was your connection to that with social media? Because you were saying that you're proud of the social media culture, but like Freddie, for example, at his time, there was no social media. So what are you proud of?
It was the fact that you mentioned like there was a point where you felt like it wasn't cool to be considered religious or ethnically diverse or whatever else, where it was like now, like Burna Boy is over here absolutely killing it. Afrobeats music is in the charts everywhere, and he is so fiercely and unapologetically African. Do you know what I mean? And he holds that up all the time, and the UK loves him for it. So I'm saying, I'm almost like, I know what you mean about that thing at the start of the social media generation where everything was hashtag Instagoals, and I think it was basically trying to force us all to look the same and act the same and do the same things and post it was all like coveting at first, wasn't it? It was all like in the era of like Jay Alvarez and his girlfriend, and he was all like abs and beaches in the Seychelles and whatever else. Whereas now I feel like what makes you cool now is how ridiculously individual you are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and like Burna Boy and Skepta and those guys, I feel like were just some of my like prime examples of that, where now it's actually really cool to just be who you are. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, again,
the pendulum is swinging again.
Pendulum swinging again. There you go. Exactly.
It's an analogy. Man, no, we've only been recording this for 30 minutes or so, and it seems like if I could summarize just some of these insights that you shared is that you are really good at like just social listening, or not only that, just like observing trends. And then you said human truths, universal human truths, right? How, like, and this is probably just like a marketing 101 question, but is this an innate curiosity you have, or of observing everything across multiple disciplines and genres, and then you take that and extrapolate it into your marketing campaigns? Like, man, you are so dialed in.
I've got no idea. Genuinely, I'm not sure. It does feel a little bit innate. I feel like I've kind of been obsessed with culture for a long time, whatever that culture is. Do you know what I mean? I love when I see somebody else who's really interested in something. I don't even care if I'm interested in that thing. If I meet someone who's like, yo, bro, archery, man, I'm deep in archery. And I'm like, really? Why? Like, what? Talk to me. Like, who are the big names in archery? What's that about? Why do you get excited? Like, I love that. Do you know what I'm saying? When I meet someone who's really passionate about a topic, and I think growing up where I grew up, like in Birmingham, like it's quite a, I don't know if you ever had the privilege of visiting Birmingham, but if not, you should. But it's a super, super like multicultural place. Like my family are all Irish descent. I was at my best friend's wedding. Growing up, we probably had like 3 best friends. One of us, I was like the Irish one. I think one of the other guys was Nigerian, and one of the other guys was Punjabi or Sikh, right? And we were at his wedding last week, and it was, I don't know if you've ever been to a Sikh wedding, or Sikh as they call it in America. It's 5 days. It is chaos. It is the biggest party you've ever seen. I absolutely love it. I'm spending the whole time there hanging out with aunties, trying to better understand Punjabi, because I can understand little bits of it, but not a ton. But then similarly, at like my African friends' weddings, I'm trying to speak Nigerian Yoruba with his aunties and whatever else. So I feel like from early, I just got exposed to culture. And I remember the first time I heard the term white privilege, and it was a weird moment for me, because I think for a lot of people like that, you don't realize how privileged you are until somebody points it out to you. But I feel like I had a different kind of privilege growing up, which was the fact that growing up in like a very working class background, a lot of immigrant friends, stuff like that, it didn't feel like we were the privileged ones. But now in later life, I definitely feel like it was, because the amount of doors that has unlocked for me is wild. Do you know what I mean? Like I went to Wimbledon recently. I was invited by Meta to go to Wimbledon, got to do the whole centre court thing. It was all very fancy. I randomly happened to get sat next to the guy who runs Facebook for India. And we got to talking about an artist who really sadly passed away there called Sidhu Moosewala. And we were chatting about that. And this guy looked at me like, what the hell? How does this white guy know about Sidhu Moosewala? That's wild. You know what I mean? But like the way I can interact with people and connect with them on a cultural basis because of that upbringing that I had has been like a phenomenal tool for me in later life. So I feel like I grew up with like a different kind of privilege as well, which was being exposed to all these different cultures, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's and you talk about, the white privilege, and there's so many different types of privileges out there. There's like geographical privilege, like the way where you were born, right? You can really dictate your life. Male privilege, right? There's 3 men here on the call, and male privilege really opens up doors, which I think is a nice segue to another question we have, which is some of these campaigns, Leanna Deeb, which is phenomenal. I think it's the first of its kind ever. Massive fan of that. Massive fan that you actually used a fabric in that out of home. I don't know how you did that. We got to talk about all that. All right. But, and then women's sports, there's a huge and important wave of celebrating female athletes, female influencers, female team-led organizations. How are you addressing this? You probably have a lot of great ideas up your sleeve on how, Gymshark wants to address this, but I'm curious on your take on that.
Yeah, 100%. So that billboard, man, the stress to make that billboard look right it's so hard. And like, again, to any like would-be marketeers out there, sometimes these causes are just willing to fight for. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't know, Leanna's just one of the most incredible women I've ever met in my life. And like, she's one of the fastest growing influencers fitness influencers and influencers on the planet. She's like on a journey with Islam, and she's recently started wearing the hijab, and that was like a new thing for her. And it was big news. And I think that was both some people sort of not rejected her for it, but probably moved away from her because of that reason, because they felt they didn't really resonate with her anymore. But as you can imagine, a lot of like hijabi women out there felt drawn even closer to her, right? So I think any good brand and talent deal in 2023 has to be authentic, right? And you have to go on this journey with your people. So this idea of, as part of our Every Strong Belongs campaign, putting Leanna on a billboard and really making a thing of the fact she's wearing the hijab, not hiding away from it in the slightest, and actually putting the physical hijab over the top of her was such an incredible idea. And by the way, I'm not big up myself when I say that. I think a lot of CMOs and business people come on here and talk about all my great ideas. Like, no, I don't do any of that. I sit in a meeting room and do boring stuff like budgets and approve. Do you know what I mean? Next year's plans. It's the geniuses at Gymshark that make the work come to life. So that's their work, not mine. But I think there is a job of those leaders to do to set up a culture where they feel they can bring ideas out to the table. When I first saw that mock-up of that billboard, I was like, yo, I'm so here for that. That's amazing. But pulling it off, nightmare. And at first it looked terrible. And you know what I mean? But whenever you're breaking new ground and you're trying to do something people haven't done before, it's always going to be tough. So that was really, really worth it. The women's sports thing, I agree with you. It's a huge conversation at the moment. Team sports aren't really a thing for Gymshark. You might notice that men's or women's, we don't really do the team sport thing. That's kind of not what we're built on. We're born out of the gym. We're born out of this thing of like the individual pursuit, do you know what I mean? And like what you can do for yourself. But with that in mind, we do get involved in some sports where it's an individual. So like boxing, for example, we sponsor Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champion of the UFC, and now obviously going off to fight Tyson Fury in the battle for the baddest motherfucker on the planet that they're having in Saudi soon, which should be cool. But we also sponsor, and again, for any of your listeners, I will always tell this story because I want more people to know about it. Katie Taylor, she's from Dublin in Ireland. Katie, when she first got into boxing, women weren't allowed to box in Ireland. So she used to scrape her hair back and they'd put the sparring helmet on her first. And she would enter fights as Kane Taylor, right? And she'd go in there and just beat the shit out of guys, right? And she was like, and she had this like incredible journey as a boxer. The Olympic Commission, the Olympic Committee, whatever their official title is, saw the rise of Katie in Ireland, saw how well she was doing. They made women's boxing an Olympic sport because they wanted Katie to compete in the Olympics, right? Which was just a phenomenal thing. So she single-handedly carried women's boxing on her back. She's a Gymshark athlete, by the way. We sponsor her, I should say that. So she managed to get women's boxing into the Olympics. Then she won gold at the Olympics, right? Now she's like run through everybody in boxing. She's won like all the belts at one weight class, and then she just recently stepped up to try and take some belts on another. So you could probably hear in parallels here, right, to another Irish combat star who did the exact same thing. Well, actually, kind of did less, really, because he didn't have to get let into the UFC, and Conor McGregor. Now, they've done very, very similar things, multiple belts, multiple weight classes, whatever else, but I bet you guys have never heard Katie's name, right? So stuff like that, like we're trying to put her on as much as possible. We go back to Ireland. After our last fight, we had her do a 5K run around Dublin, and we invited all the girls from local boxing schools out to come and see her because this term gets used a lot in terms of diversity and inclusion, but I think it can be used for so many other things. But if you can see it, you can be it, right? So for those girls, you can imagine to go for a run with Katie, who holds all the titles, who got a gold in the Olympics for the country, all that kind of stuff, for them to be able to literally go on a run alongside her through the streets of Dublin, that's like someone running through the streets with Muhammad Ali. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully one day there'll be a whole other generation of young female boxers, all because one day Gymshark decided to put on this event where you could go for a run with Katie Taylor. So yeah, man, we do our bit. As always, I wish we could do more, but I think the stuff we always do is really, really authentic, and you know, we'll always fight to do as much as we can.
Do you think you'll keep this kind of avant-garde approach even though you get bigger and bigger? Because I feel like you've been able to take risks that bigger companies may have not wanted to touch because they might have been like, well, I don't know, this might upset some people, so let's not do that, or let's just make sure we make everybody happy. But you guys are really taking, you're taking risks because, yeah, like the hijab campaign, who knows? Like you don't, there's no way to know if that's going to upset certain people, alienate certain people, what it's like. I ultimately think it's genius and it's the right thing to do because Leanna wanted to do it. So do you think that you kind of, I don't want to say being a smaller company because $1.5 billion is still massive, but being, the company
that, out there. Yeah.
Being the company that you are really allows you to take more risks.
I think luckily we sort of aim our marketing and our brand at what we call the social native. So you've heard of people refer to people as the digital natives, right, who came up with like computers and stuff, but we're actually a touch younger than that, so we're probably the social native. Thankfully, that generation seems to really buy into this stuff. Do you know what I mean? You just called it, meaning you said it's the right thing to do. There are plenty of people older than you who are like, that's not the right thing to do. Brands shouldn't get involved in conversations like that, or brands shouldn't champion that, whatever else. But the generation that us three are a part of, and then the ones that come after us, they've shifted their views on this. So I like to think that as long as we're doing right by them, we can't really go too far wrong. Do you know what I mean? And if some more traditional, older consumers out there don't think Gymshark's for them, well, that's fine, man. There's tons of brands you can buy from. Do you know what I mean? We don't mind that. So yeah, we stand by what we believe. It also helps that we're a private company, right? Like Ben, our founder, owns the whole thing, so no shareholders to do right by, no Wall Street, no none of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? So you're right, we probably can be a bit braver, but anybody, when you guys sent this sort of the email over about this, I remember there was a line somewhere is, we'd love to hear if there's any brands that you guys are inspired by. Go and look up Ben and Jerry's. Anybody out there, go and look up Ben and Jerry's and what those guys do in terms of standing by what they believe in, because you wouldn't expect it from an ice cream brand, but those guys are wild. Like they'll get like arrested at like protests and stuff, like the founders of the
Really?
Yeah, man. Look, after this, go look up Ben and Jerry's. Those guys are dope. I love what they do.
And can you expand on that a little bit more, just for the listeners here who don't have the context? Again, I'm a huge fan of Ben and Jerry's. It reminds me of the whole quote, "Stand for something."
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, so please.
I don't want to do it a disservice by not filling in the details properly. But again, I want everyone to go out and do their homework, do some Googling.
Yeah.
But there's literally been moments where I think it's one of the founders, I can't remember which one, like it sounds so stupid, I don't know if it's Ben or it's Jerry, but one of them has been like Black Lives Matter and some other issues that they were personally invested in, have gone out there seriously getting involved, like in the streets, do you know what I'm saying? Not writing checks to causes going out there and getting involved and even getting arrested and stuff in places. But like, love them or hate them, you know what they stand for, do you know what I mean? So you have to admire their audacity. Now, I don't know if we'll ever go that far. I don't know if you'd ever see me in handcuffs on the news, do you know what I'm saying? But it's something to aspire towards, and I love how much they stand by what they believe in as a business. Like, I think we need businesses like that. And again, that's something that you should be proud of the social media generation for as well. It's no longer just this relationship between consumers and companies where it's like, I give you cash, you give me product. Now people are like, yeah, but why would I spend my cash with you? What do you stand for? Do you know what I'm saying? Who sits behind your company? Like, is it some nameless corporation, or what are your values? Do you know what I mean? So you kind of have to be proud of them for wanting to know, are you 10 toes down? Are you here for what I stand for, or are you just some nameless corporation? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember studying this in university when I was studying business at York University. Shout out York U. And in marketing, like 101, about like civil regulation and how there's like a pie of expectation from the consumer of like, it was a small piece of the pie of CSR efforts, ESG, whatever you call it, right? Now that piece of the pie is massive. Like, to your point, right? What's your purpose? What do you stand for? What are you investing in from a social perspective? Because if you Google Ben and Jerry's, the first thing that pops up is like dismantle white supremacy, or silence is not an option. Like, those are some of the key things that pop up right away. I don't know if it's substantial SEO investment or something of that accord. And for listeners, SEO, search engine optimization. But can you walk us through your purpose-driven, just a little bit more of your purpose-driven approach? Because you were adhering to multiple body types, ethnic backgrounds. Historically, gym brands are for like one body type, the most fit person. Exactly. Look at everybody. He just flexed those massive biceps on this.
Biceps. Yeah. We have like a mission statement internally, right? Which we don't really communicate this externally, but like one of our mission statements is we want to inspire as many people as we can to step up to the bar and raise it, right? Now, again, king of analogies or whatever you called me earlier on, stepping up to the bar and raising it can mean a plethora of things, but obviously the main one being getting to the gym, lift some weights, right? But if you go back to that first people, as many people as we can, right? If that's truly is your mission, you can't afford to exclude people. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need as many people as you can. And then if we go back to that line I said earlier about if you can see it, you can be it, then if we exclusively showed certain body types and nothing else, then people are going to think, oh man, that's not a brand for me. Do you know what I mean? So for those who don't know, when we opened our flagship store on Regent Street in London, in the UK, that's like our Fifth Avenue or Paris's Champs-Élysées or whatever. We scanned real humans, real members of our community. We 3D scanned them and then had them made as mannequins in our store, with like real, because and you only really see it when you guys are in Regent Street, please drop in and take a look at them. When you see a real person as a mannequin, you know, only then you realize how like weird regular mannequins are. They're these odd shapes that look like some sort of alien, Abe's Odyssey, really thin, no real proportions, like long-faced things. And then when you see like a real human, like the ones in our store, like there's females deadlifting with like proper childbearing hips. Do you know what I mean? There's an above the knee amputee. There's a guy in a wheelchair doing with a kettlebell over his head. These are real humans from our community we put in. And again, it's that idea that even in our mannequins and in every touch point with Gymshark, there should be some sort of way that you can see yourself in that. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe even not yourself, or maybe the person you didn't expect to see in that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, man, we do like, if we're gonna grow this brand, if we're gonna inspire as many people as we can step up to the bar and raise it, then we've got to show as many people as we can that this can be a brand for them. And after that, diversity and inclusion, this purpose-driven thing that we do, these initiatives that we get involved in, they're all just sort of par for course and just, you know, another step on the way to doing it.
I gotta say, Noel, I didn't know much about Gymshark before our conversation, but I have a ton of respect for you guys, because as you're saying this, you know, I'm going back to my own experience, and you're totally right, because when I bought those strainers, I didn't look like the guys that you typically see wearing strainers, right? Like I wasn't diced and massive and wanted to show off my massive lats. That wasn't it. But for me, it was a symbol that I was confident enough finally to wear them, right? That was really the important thing about me buying the strainers. It represented a moment in my life where I felt, all right, I'm confident enough to wear this. It doesn't matter that I'm not as huge. It doesn't matter that I'm not as ripped, but I'm now confident enough to wear this. And so I think that's basically what your brand represents and stands up for, which I think is amazing. I want to start to kind of bring this back to you, the man, Noel. But before I do that, if there's people out there starting their own company or starting their own business, which I've done, and it's incredibly difficult, what's kind of the number one advice you would give them when it comes to the focus on their brand identity? Because that's a very difficult thing. Like even with Dharma Gin, right? Like we're always evaluating like, okay, well, what is our identity? Like, why are we doing this? What's our purpose? All that kind of stuff. What's a good piece of advice that you can give new brands?
That's a great question. I think it's really, really subjective, but I think my honest thing would be, I think don't be afraid to be too niche and just stand for what you stand for and then go with it. I think it's really tempting to when the sales aren't quite going how you like, or when stuff's a bit and you start rethinking it, second guessing yourself, second guessing why you started the thing in the first place, second guessing your logo and your tone of voice and the way you do things. You know what I mean, stands the chance if you love it at the start and you've sort of scratched your own itch for something that you love, there will be enough people out there to love it in the same way. Do you know what I mean? Who knew that gaming was going to become what it became? Like when people started off gaming YouTube and stuff like that, watching somebody else play a game, that would have seemed like the most niche thing in the world, and now look at us. I remember being on a call with an agent talking about some talent a few years back, and then as we were finishing the call, he said, oh no, by the way, if you're interested, I also represent the top 4 slime influencers in the world. And I was like, the top 4 what? And he was like, slime influencers. And I had to be like, so obviously I stole it out at the time. I went, oh yeah, I'll let you know, man. And then I had to go away and Google slime. What does he mean? And it was this weird, you guys might have seen it, this trend that the kids are doing where they like put something else and something else together and you create slime, you create like different versions. You might do like a white one with a gold glitter in and then a silver one with a blue glitter in. But there was these kids with like millions and millions and millions of followers, slime influencers, showing you how to make different kinds of slime. Who the hell would have thought that was, do you know what I mean? Like widespread enough to do what it did. So I think some of the coolest brands in the world have been born out of somebody scratched their own itch and look what it became. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, don't second guess yourself. Like if you try and be everything to everyone, you're probably going to end up being nothing to everyone.
Yeah,
you like that, Alex? I tried to think of an Aladdin one, but I didn't get it.
Man, I know that was good. That was cold, man. Listen, let us know when the rap album comes out, brother, because you got some
bars.
Yeah, you got bars, brother. Sorry, we're going all over the place. We got to find a way to make this transition better with our editor.
I was finding a way, but Alex just keeps having questions. You're gonna ask some more questions about marketing. Go for it, man.
I'm sorry, Vito. We're gonna boomerang this back to you. But I'm just really curious about Hella. And then even a step back further, like Hella was like the first or second African American man to run across all of the U.S. It's amazing to see the diverse portfolio of athletes that you sponsor. And then I think this leads to the main question here, which is how do you identify these people, influencers to sponsor, and these incredible stories that you profile with your existing global platform to give them a voice, which is essentially the goal of this podcast, right? There's parallels there.
That's dope, man.
How do you identify them, man?
It's not easy, I'll be honest with you. So yeah, for the record, Hella was the first African American guy to run from LA to New York. So big shout out to Hella, absolute legend. He didn't know this. You guys know who Casey Neistat is, right? Hella was the biggest Casey Neistat fan ever, and obviously you can't run in New York without mentioning Casey Neistat. He is Mr. Run the Streets of New York, so he didn't know this, but we surprised him. We paid Casey to go out, meet him in New Jersey, and run back into the Manhattan. It was the YouTube video is incredible. Check it out if you didn't get a chance. And the other cool thing was, it was when Casey had moved to LA and he hadn't been on YouTube for like a year, and we brought him back to YouTube, back to New York to run and finish this run with Hella. So yeah, it was an incredible moment. But yeah, how do we identify them? Honestly, I wish I had like the Gymshark guide to identifying really cool stories. I think it kind of comes down to the fact that, to the point that Mina made earlier, like, we're small enough to be agile, but we're big enough to be able to cut checks for people, to be able to get Casey Neistat involved in moments like that, right? And to do some of these bigger budget things. It's kind of a real nice sweet spot. Do you know what I mean? Because if you go too far the other way, you might go for the smaller brands that can be agile, but they don't really have the dollars to back it. You know what I'm saying? You go too far the other way, and it's, well, the brands are big enough, but they've got to run it through their managers, and the whole thing just takes forever and slows down and whatever else. So it's kind of a perfect sweet spot. And because once you've done one or two things like this, I think it attracts the names after that. Do you know what I mean? Like, Francis Ngannou famously, like, doesn't get along with anybody, right? Like, in terms of, like, he's like, you don't own me, you can't tell me what to do. Like, his relationship with the UFC was a really interesting one. He was like, no, you cannot tell me what to do. I'll do my own thing, trust me. Like, this is a guy that's made his way from sand mines across Europe into France, where he was homeless, and then he admits that for his first 4 fights in the UFC, he didn't know the rules. He just knew he had to get in there and beat the guy up, which is then he goes on to be the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, and then someone tries to tell him, no, you can't fight Tyson Fury, and he goes, you want to bet? Watch me. And now he's doing that in Saudi Arabia and getting an absolute bag for it. Do you know what I mean? So Francis is somebody that famously doesn't want to work with anybody else or really get along with him if they try and tell him what to do or try and make money on his name or whatever else. Yet he's been sponsored by Gymshark for years because he just messes with us and likes our mentality. He likes the way we do things. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you've got a reputation like that for the Liana billboard, for David Lade, for Hella, for supporting Francis Ngannou in his quest to fight Tyson Fury, like, the people come, like, they make their way towards us. Do you know what I mean? And then, like I said earlier, I like to think that me and Ben and some of the other leaders here at Gymshark foster a culture where you can bring stories out to the table. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to get laughed out of the park, and it might be, listen, this might not make all the millions of dollars, but you better know it's going to make a hell of an impact to a lot of these kids' lives. And then we're open to hear stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And if we agree and if we're on board, then it happens. And yeah, it kind of goes full circle then. Do you know what I mean? And like we say, it's just, it's setting up a culture of, like, I don't know, inclusivity and openness and stuff like that. Like we always say, best idea wins. It's not the person with the fanciest job title who comes up with the best idea. It's whoever comes up with the best idea. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you're a 19-year-old intern and you've seen something dope on TikTok and you think we could make a global campaign out of it, let's hear it, man. I sit at the same desk as everybody else. We don't have a corner office. There's no reserved parking spaces for anybody, you know what I mean, with a fancy job title or any of that stuff. So yeah, man, I think it's, I don't think there's one answer. I think there's no 100% answer to that question. There's loads of tiny little 1% answers to that question.
Well, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like you're a very inclusive external focus, but also internal environment, which is actually a question we had. So it's amazing that you adopt that and adhere to that internally. All right, Mina. Sorry about that, man. Back over to you.
No worries, man. You guys got to geek out on marketing. I know. It's marketing geek talk. It's all good. So Noel Mack, the person, the man, the individual, I want to ask you what success means to you, especially after you've gotten so much success, right? Because I know for me personally, success means one thing before you achieve it. It means something completely different after you've achieved it. What does success mean to you now? And what's the thing that drives you? Like, what are you working towards now in your life?
First of all, damn, I'm honored that someone as successful as you said that I've had success. That's very humbling, because I kind of don't feel like I have yet personally. But again, maybe that's one of the curses of being ambitious, is you never really feel like you got there. Do you know what I mean? We do a lot of work with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I remember something Gary said which really smacked me in the face, was where he was like, he was like, if your happiness comes from making $2,000 a month and out of like your own candles that you make in the spare room in your apartment, he was like, I'm so jealous. He said, because for whatever reason, I can't be that happy with that. He said, I want to own the New York Jets. And he was like, and I know I'm not going to be happy until I get there. And like, he was almost like, I'm genuinely wish I was in a position like you. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think I'm as bad as Gary. Like, Gary is obsessed, like absolutely obsessed. The guy's the busiest man I've ever met, and he's just horrendously ambitious, which I love about him. But I don't think I'm as bad as that. But I do think it's I think success, I think when you're younger, it's like a pie chart and you think it's like 50% money and 50% like status. Do you know what I mean? And then I think as you get older, you realize, oh, wow, it's nowhere near that. It's so much more about happiness. Do you know what I mean? I recently read that book, Ikigai. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it is like, oh man, listen, there's another piece of homework. I know I keep dishing out homework for you guys and the listeners. This book is incredible, right? I'll give you the TLDR, 10-second rundown. It started as a study into blue zones. Blue zones are the places in the world where people live the longest, right? So the place on the planet with the most centenarians, I think, or centurions, whatever you want to call them, people over the age of 100, is Okinawa in Japan. So they go there.
It's an island off of Japan. It's a small island in Japan, yeah.
They go there and they're talking to them about, you know, is it your food? Is it your diet? Is it your training regime? What is it? And there was a bunch of stuff like that, but they keep mentioning the word Ikigai as well. And they're saying, and it's my Ikigai, and saying, what is Ikigai? And basically they talk about the fact that your Ikigai is, it's, if you imagine a Venn diagram with 4 circles, right? And it's like something that you love, something that you're good at, something that you can be paid to do, and something that the world needs from you, right? And if you can find that, the center of that thing, something that you love, you're good at, you can be paid for, and the world needs from you, then you've arrived. Basically, you've got your stuff figured out. Do you know what I mean? And this is why they never retire there, because they're like, if you find something like that, why the hell would you want to stop doing it? Do you know what I mean? You're only going to want to stop doing it if either no one wants to pay you to do it anymore, or you're no good at it. Do you know what I mean? Or you don't love it. But if you've got one of those things, don't stop doing it. And that purpose, that getting up with a reason to get up every morning, is the thing that keeps them getting up every morning. Do you know what I mean? So I think success to me means doing something like that, being able to wake up every morning and doing something that I absolutely love. Do you know what I mean? Like this Gymshark thing's journey, being able to talk to you about some of these anecdotes, these keynotes that I give, and these people that I get to put up on a pedestal, from Francis Ngannou to Katie Taylor and whatever else, is something that, man, if nobody wanted to pay me to do this, guess what? I would fucking do it for free. Do you know what I'm saying? So that, I think these days, that is what success looks like to me. It's doing something that I love to do every single day.
That's great, man. That's a great answer.
I'll accept that analogy, by the way. You're going to do that.
The last couple of things I want to close up with are, one, mentorship, which is something that I've been thinking a lot about. I don't think I have a lot of mentors in my life. I wish I had more. Is mentorship important to you, and how much has it contributed to where you are in your life? Or are you kind of a lone wolf kind of guy that we were talking about earlier, like stoicism, lone wolf?
Yeah.
Which spectrum do you fall into?
I think I was a bit of a lone wolf earlier on, but I felt like I hit a little bit of a plateau. And then to keep going, I had to find people that could help me advance on the journey. But I don't think I've got like one individual mentor and I was like, oh yeah, man, big shout out to John. Like, he helped. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got like a personal boardroom, if you like, and I've got my guy who I go to for that, and I've got my girl who I go to for that, and I've got my other guy who I go to for that. Do you know what I mean? And I've like experts in different regions who are really deep into different things who I probably reference. Do you know what I mean? Like, I definitely know that my work ethic and my drive came from my dad and my granddad. And then around that, I've got different people for different things. Do you know what I mean? People who give me honest. I think the commonality with most of those people is they're willing to like call me out on my shit when I'm being a dick. Do you know what I mean? And just tell me, no, you're fucking up, man. You need to do better. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think mentors have become more of a thing to me in recent times than they were in the past.
You're the second person in 2 days that we've sat down and talked with that have mentioned a personal boardroom and having your own like personal board of directors. So that's something really interesting that's been really resonating with me. I want to finish up with finally the one thing that people attribute a lot of their life to, because it's valid. Experiences. What are one or two experiences that you can recall from your memory that have really shaped either who you are or what you do? It could be at Gymshark, it could be just in life in general, it could be at Rebrand. Like, what are one or two experiences that you think back on and go, that's really like influenced who I am and how I run my life?
I don't remember this one having the impact at the time, but I did some like, not therapy, but sort of therapy. And I kind of reverse engineered it to realize the impact it did have. When we were younger, we didn't have a ton of money, right? My dad was a police officer, and none of the police officers wanted to work on New Year's Eve or Christmas Day for obvious reasons. They wanted to be at home with their families, right? Which meant if my dad went to work when everybody else wanted to be off, he would get paid double time, right? Or sometimes time and a half. But obviously I remember him thinking, damn, I should probably explain to my son that I'm not going to be around on Christmas Day or whatever. So I remember from like the earliest days that I can remember, my dad sitting down with me, probably because he felt guilty and saying, hey, listen, son, I'm not going to be here Christmas Day, but here's how it works, right? The other dads don't want to work at this time, but they've probably got some more money than we have. So if we want to have more money, I have to go in and work them. But what that means is I can afford to buy you presents and da-da-da-da. And I'll be real, when I was a kid, I'm thinking, shit, as long as I got presents, you can be where you want. I don't care. Do you know what I'm saying? But in later life, I think that the seed that sort of planted with me early was almost like, if you're willing to work when others aren't, then you can kind of have the things that others don't. Do you know what I mean? Like you can advantage and you can be more efficient with your time. And when I think about the work ethic that I had at like 21, 22, around that age, ridiculous. Like the hours I was putting were absolutely ridiculous. I remember even my dad at one point being like, you can't keep doing this. This is stupid. Like I didn't drink alcohol because I thought alcohol was conducive. I still really don't, but conducive to like going out and spending money, and then that kills the next day for you and whatever else. And I would just work all the time. So it probably got a little bit poisonous, a little bit too far, but I definitely think as I look back on it and I'm honest with myself in later life, that was a seed that was planted really early with me, which led on to this, bordering on weird work ethic in later life. Do you know what I mean? And some of that is still in me, and I can play that card when I want to, but now I think I'm just a little bit better at switching it off, because I think sometimes when you realize what the problem is, you can kind of get the problem in a headlock rather than the problem having you in a headlock, if that makes sense. So I think I've managed to unpack it a bit better there.
100%. Nice, man. Well, listen, that's this has been amazing, man. It's been amazing to get to know you as Noel Mack, the man. It's been amazing to get to know Gymshark as the company. I truly didn't know all the incredible initiatives and your approach. I think the biggest thing is your approach, right? And I think what you said earlier really resonated with me, that if you try to be everything to everyone, you're gonna be nothing to no one. Is that the saying exactly? Did I mess it up?
You got it.
But yeah, that really resonates with me, because I think about that often as well as a brand in my own right. You know, actors, whether it's a blessing or a curse, we're kind of our own brands, right? Like, and so it's true. A lot of the times you try to be everything to everyone because you don't want to upset anyone, and then you start to think like, but what am I really? Like, who am I really? Like, if I'm just trying to please everybody. So thank you for that, man. It's been amazing getting to know you and getting to know Gymshark, and congratulations on all of the success. You are definitely have achieved success after success. I know you don't see it that way. And I understand that, but congratulations on all the success, my man.
Thank you, fellas. It was an honor to be invited on. And also, by the way, the purpose of your podcast, like shining a light on diversity and inclusion, I also think is like an amazing, in a world where like everyone has got a podcast. I think this is one of the reasons why I said, yeah, you know what, let's have that conversation, because I feel like people don't do that normally. So, you know, congrats to you guys for doing something so cool as well. That's really cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
All right, fellas, have a great day.
All right.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe, share, and join the journey of growth untold. Don't miss a single nugget. Hit that follow button now on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram.